Welcome to the Isabella Gardner Museum in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm facing the modern building, which is the entrance to the museum. The museum is to the right of the entrance wing. The Italian designed palace has 3 floors of galleries. The first most striking sight is the garden. As I viewed the garden, I began to immerse myself in the atmosphere of this unique museum. I felt a transition in my mind from the outer pedestrian world to the world of nature and beauty. Later, I realized this was a spell cast on me by Isabella Gardner. Under her instructions, all of the objects were chosen to express her sensibility towards art which touches our hearts and minds. There are so many plants here to make up the whole feeling of the museum. Here's some bell-shaped fuchsia. Notice the Venetian-style windows. Here's some star-shaped bellflowers, some ball-shaped hydrangeas, and other objects of art in the garden. Now, there's an off-site greenhouse where the plants are nourished and rotated in according to their seasonal blooms. This is a sacred space, a sanctuary of visual pleasures. I'm crossing the bridge from the digital to the analog. Now, I was so excited to see the fine art, I skipped some nearby rooms and my eager legs dashed up the stairs to the second floor. The first floor is the early Italian room. The Italians are known for their colorful paintings and Christian imagery. Here's a Madonna of Child, or many versions of Madonna and Child. Here's a specially fine portrait of a young man with his red top and red cap, painted over 500 years ago, around the year 1500. This profile portrait was painted 600 years ago. To the right, I pan the camera to the Venetian window and I see a sculptured pigeon that looks down into the garden. I enter the bright red Raphael room. Raphael is one of the highest ranking artists of the Italian Renaissance. We will see 2 paintings by him in this room. This is St. George slaying the dragon. A Madonna and Child. Now this head is from an earlier time, before the year 1000. Here's a Botticelli. You should know this artist. We'll see another painting by Botticelli. The presence of the garden is always felt, a source of light in the upper floor rooms. This Christian painting with a religious theme also features deep perspective, which is a scientific visual innovation of the time. Here's a treasured painting by Raphael. And here's another portrait by Raphael. When I saw this man, I thought of that young boy who had grown into a man. Here's a delicate restored guitar. So this museum has paintings, sculptures, furniture, fabrics, objects, and more. Next to the short gallery. Now in the corner of this, in the left side, is the mother of Isabella Stewart Gardner. Her name was Isabella Stewart. And on the right, we see some portraits. And this is a portrait of Isabella's husband, Jack Gardner. Here's Isabella Stewart Gardner. Some books here with titles related to art and Italian history. Here's a finely carved shelf. Also, some fascinating ceramic objects. And here's some etchings. Now on to the little salon. The French salon was a room in a mansion dedicated for cultural entertainment. This has tapestry, and it has low light to protect the colors in the tapestry. And I'm going to bump up some of the lighting here because I can adjust it in editing. Here's some finely delicate ceramic objects. Some of these, for my eye, are kind of a decadent art. Here's a cabinet of a. Here's some Here's a cabinet of especially crafted items, boxes and metalwork, ornaments, and bottles. Okay, so the next room is the tapestry room. Now, this is a big, large room with a high ceiling, and so I'm going to adjust the light here. I can do that in my post-production here. One of the first things we see is a Velázquez style portrait. This is a copy of a painting by Spaniard Diego Velázquez. It's a portrait of Pope Innocent X. Many of the most valuable paintings in the museum were acquired through the assistance of the famous art critic Bernard Berenson. He lived in Italy and he specialized in Italian Renaissance art. This is the other end of the large room, and pan through the area. This is done by a local Boston painter. Here's a fine lettered Latin manuscript. This head of Christ originates in Germany. This is the Spanish figure of the Archangel Michael. And here's a finely carved Spanish chest. And now on to the last room on the second floor, called the Dutch room. Here we see some paintings in the corner. The first ones I want to look at here are by Hans Holbein the Younger. He was a painter in Henry VIII's court. To the left is a painter by an Italian, Alessandro Aloni, from the same period of history. In this corner, we see on the left is Queen Mary. This is a Dutch genre painting of a music lesson. Now on this wall, we see more portraits. That empty frame represents a painting that was stolen from the Isabella Gardner Museum. The one I'm looking at now, this is by Zubaran, a Spanish painter. The painting on the left is by the Dutch artist Rembrandt. No one can do shadows like Rembrandt. To the right is another painting by Hans Holbein. And here are some more portraits. As we leave that room and walk in the hallway, these musicians lighten the mood. Now we go up to the third floor. This is the Veronese room. We see this delightful Venetian sedan chair. Here are some smaller paintings of Venice. Just treasures. Now, Isabella Gardner's parents established their wealth from importing linen, just like this lace. So we're going to see many examples of this delicate craftsmanship involved in these textiles. James McNeill Whistler was a friend of Mrs. Gardner, and here are some of his pastels. On to the Titian room. Titian is a famous Italian painter, and note that this room is also a kind of a red room, has some gold and red in the background, but we look at a lot of these colorful Italian paintings, and here's a fine stone decoration on a box. Here is the painting by Titian. Here's a wonderful sublime painting of Christ on the cross. This is a Venetian senator. And here's some more larger paintings. The left there is a Velázquez painting. This is a Diego Velázquez painting of King Philip of Spain. Now we move on to the long gallery. This is a Botticelli, Sandro Botticelli, very famous Italian painter of the Renaissance. Now, in the long gallery, one notable thing in the walls are all this special blue. It's called Bardini blue, and of course it was selected by Mrs. Gardner. It adds a lot, gives a sense of majesty and great background for these objects. This is the sublime mother and child. At the end of the room, we walk into the chapel with the stained glass windows and religious objects. And next we're going to move to the last room on the third floor, and that is the Gothic room. Another large room with a high ceiling. Wherever you stand in this room, you find something interesting to see. Now here's a portrait of our hostess, Isabella Stewart Gardner. The pearls around her waist balance out the halo around her head. This is Adam and Eve. Some boxes on the table. Now, leaving that room, we look down from the third floor. You can still see the garden. Look down through some of the windows here. Now, as I said, I skipped some rooms on the ground floor, and now I went back down. I returned to downstairs to look inside the rooms on the first level, on the ground floor. This is the night room. Smaller spaces, less grand art, but it's still very intimate and more of a home feeling. This is the Vaticino. Now this is remember we're in the palace, and this was the original entry to the palace right here, those doors with those guards. Here's a bookcase. A lot of these books are about history and art. Now, this is near the Spanish cloister, this end. And one corner of the Spanish cloister is a Spanish chapel. This is a tomb figure of a knight and a Madonna and child here. This is the Spanish chapel. Now, once you walk back out, then you're back in the Spanish cloister. And to the right are some tiles, and to the left is outside. Here's the tiles. And outside the window, you can see the monk's garden. But before we go out there, we're going to look at this wonderful John Singer Sargent painting called El Jaleo. It's an exciting work of a dancer and musicians at night. John Singer Sargent was a friend of Mrs. Gardner, and he painted the portrait we saw of Mrs. Gardner. This winged lion is the symbol of Venice. Here's a bell, and so outside we're seeing the monk's garden. This will be as we exit this building, this will be the last area that we will look at in this tour. Here's an orchid, remembering these wonderful plants. The monk's garden is some trees and shrubbery, and then there's a path where you can walk around and meditate and exercise and refresh your mind by moving around in a different environment. And it's really a delightful experience to walk through here after seeing all this wonderful art. Thanks for watching.